back to the cast. This is the Colorado Kayak Fishing Club podcast, episode 5. We're in our captain's meeting for 2023. This will be a good video to have in reference. We'll go ahead and link it as a featured video so that everyone can go back and use this captain's meeting for just some important information. And on the show, we got our Bass Tournament Director, Jeremy Pierce, with us. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I'm just going to kind of be sitting in the background on this one with you, talking through some pieces. But yeah, this will be a captain's meeting. Maybe go over your intent and introduce yourself to the club as well. Kind of been good asking guys to do that as they come on. We do have a pretty new board. I'm sure most guys know you, but if they don't, let them know a little about yourself.
Been around for a little while now. I've been kayak fishing for quite a while. I've been on the water ever since I was little bitty. Started kayak fishing, got out of big boats, moved into kayaks, got my Hobie in the beginning of 2018. Started looking for clubs to start learning more about, more competitive fishing from the kayaks. Found CKFC, did a couple tournaments that first year, and then dove right in. Been trying to fish full time since 2019 with the club. Had a few things the past couple of years. It's taken me out of a couple of tournaments, but back to the goal of fishing every single tournament this year, all the live in person, all 10 of them. So all 5 bass tournaments and then all 5 multi-tournaments. So absolutely love it. Love the club, love being with it. So this is actually my second stint on the board. I did 1 year as a fill-in for the sponsor manager before Ronnie took over and absolutely knocked it out of the park and took that to whole new levels. And now Scott's just absolutely killing it, boosting it up even more, growing the club. And I decided to get back on the board again, doing the tournament director. So enjoying it. I love participating with the club and everything that we do, especially the giving them at the end of the year to the charity.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey man, let's get right into it. So guys can know what they need to do for this year for the tournaments.
All right, so the captain's meetings have evolved over the last few years. Originally, the club, we actually got together in the mornings before all of our live tournaments, and the board members went over the rules and the plans for the day, things like that. As we evolved and got into Tourney X, we started doing a live captain's meeting before each one of the tournaments. The tournament directors would get on there, go over everything, and then back in 2021, Alex kind of set the standard for it with one individual captain's meeting that went over pretty much everything. And then after that, we'd have little bits and pieces, specific rules for each tournament that would come out in Tourney X. And then when we do the identifier, we just knock out a couple little quick reminders and stuff like that. So this is kind of a mandatory watch for anybody that's going to participate in the tournaments. And then it's also just a good reference point. If you're going to tournament fish with us, it's something that you can look back at. If you've got a quick question, try to find the spot in this video that'll hopefully answer it.
Yeah, and one caveat to that, we were just talking before this hit record here, is on our website we have the 2023 CKFC rules. It's PDF. It's there when you sign up and everything. So everything will be on this video, but everything will also be in writing on the website there. You can reference that PDF. That way, some of these places we don't have best service. So just go ahead and download that, and you'll have it to reference if you need it.
And it's also attached in Tourney X for each one of the tournaments.
Awesome.
So you've got a copy of the rules right there each time you sign up.
Awesome. Well, cool, man. So I guess the first thing we're starting with is the sign up part of the Tourney X and how all that works, right?
Yeah. So one of the most common questions that we always end up getting towards the beginning of the seasons, even in the middle with some of the stragglers coming in a little bit later, especially with all the military in the area that move in, a little bit later, is how to sign up for the club, how to sign up for the tournaments. So the first thing that you've got to do is go to the cokayakfishing.com website. That's our homepage. That's where everything kind of started, beyond the Facebook side of the house. And go in and under the tournament fees and info, you can go in and sign up for a series. You can either do bass, multi, or both. You go in, once you click that and sign up, you can pay through PayPal. It's $20 a series. That will then get you your passwords for the tournament registrations on Tourney X. So when you go to Tourney X, you got to have like the free membership or paid if you want to be a verified member. And when you search Tourney X on there, you'll see all of our tournaments that you can sign up for. Each one is going to have that password in there that you actually have to pull from the system generated email when you register for the series. Once you get that email, you throw the password in there, you can pay for the tournament, get fully registered, and you're good to go. You're ready to tournament fish. The other things that gets you when you sign up for the series is you also get the password on our CO kayak fishing page. There's actually a members benefits section, and in that same email that you get the Tourney X password, you'll get our sponsor password. Please do not share that. We send it to each one of the paid members, and if somebody can't find that and they're a paid member, they just let us know and we'll shoot it back out to them. But there's tons of discounts there. Some big things to note, like you pay $20 to get a series membership, and that'll pretty much pay for itself. If you're trying to set up a kayak, either getting, rod holders, stuff from Yak Attack, amped batteries, if you're wanting baits from Missile Baits, tungstens, anything like that, dude, there's enough discounts on there that it's more than going to cover that $20 membership. So it's basically just throwing a little bit of money to charity so that you can get money off on stuff that you need for your kayak anyways. Or we've had several members with their big boats take advantage of our battery discounts and save absolutely tons of money. While you're on CO kayak fishing, when you get those passwords and stuff, you can also go ahead and go to the CKFC entry form, which is actually our emergency contact form. It's going to have the make of your kayak, the color, emergency contact, somebody that we can get a hold of if we can't get a hold of you out on the water. Say you don't check back in on Tourney X and we can't get a hold of you, just to make sure that you're okay. So that's just the emergency contact form. That is a requirement for all of our tournaments.
Awesome.
The next part of that, so when you actually do go and sign up for the tournaments, we've changed things around a little bit this year. You had to send a PDF waiver to us that was signed. So this year we've changed that up some. So we now have that waiver in Tourney X. So it's under terms and conditions. It's just a liability waiver saying that you're not going to hold CKFC responsible. You should be following all the rules and safety precautions. We also have insurance that's set up, but we do have the terms and conditions that you have to agree for with that. We do still require, if you have a minor that's fishing the tournaments, we do still require that you go to the CO kayak fishing page and print out the minor waiver, and both the minor and the guardian have to sign that and send to our email, ckfcwaivers@gmail.com. Tourney X, when you sign up for it, it's also going to have any of the pertinent times for the tournaments, both the launch time, start times, and also the lines end time that ends the tournament. It'll have submission deadlines. All that information should be in Tourney X for you. Tourney X will also hold the phone numbers for the tournament director. I think my number is on pretty much all of them. Honestly, 863-610-1763. I should be at all the tournaments this year. If you're having a problem, if you need to get off the water early and just want to check in with somebody to say, hey, something's come up, you can always get a hold of me. Let me know, and we'll get everything taken care of that we've got to. On Tourney X, before the tournaments, as we get ramped up, the night before each tournament, the identifiers will come up between 7 and 8 p.m. They'll launch on Tourney X. We do a Facebook Live where a lot of times we use the comment section to get numbers and letters. And then that's how we'll get the actual identifier itself for each tournament. So it's fairly random. And then we'll post that up on Tourney X, and we'll do a Facebook post. So make sure you're watching for that identifier. Make sure that you don't go into Tourney X before that time, because every tournament is given and kind of like a random identifier code from Tourney X in the system. If you go in there and grab that, that's not going to be the correct identifier. And unfortunately, your fish that have that identifier is going to be DQ'd. So submit fish early. So if you do have an issue with that, we can identify it, send you the correct information, and hopefully you can get everything taken care of and don't lose back behind too much. But I know that did cost a couple people this past year as well.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do on that is just use that Facebook Live. That's going to be coming out of the mouth of the tournament director on what that actual code is, because like you said, Tourney X is going to have one that's automatically generated, and it might not be the right one depending what time you look at it. So if you hop on Facebook, it'll be recorded live or live streamed or whatever. But you can also reference that, in the future as well. So it's not like you just have to watch it at that time. It'll be up there. So, if you miss that announcement, it'll still be up there on a post, and you can get that identifier there. Probably the safest bet so that you don't get the wrong one.
And a good way to do it too is check Tourney X right before the tournament starts, because that'll be loaded in there directly off of it. So don't get it the day before. And the last piece with Tourney X, ensure that your location information is turned on in both Tourney X and in your phone. We're going to foot stomp this over and over again. It causes a lot of issues. We've got service issues. We've got stuff like that. But the biggest thing is just making sure that, when you go to register for tournaments, you're learning that system and making sure that you've got location permissions turned on for that app, so that you don't have any problems arise in the future. That's pretty much it for the beef of Tourney X. We'll talk about a little bit more to it when we get to photo submissions. But then from there, we're going to go to safety requirements for all the tournaments. The number one safety requirement, foot stomp, over and over again. And you'll hear it. We'll harp on it in the club sometimes. We don't mean to be preachy about it, but we never want to have to make that phone call in your emergency contacts, saying, hey, where's this person? We can't find them. We don't want to have to call emergency services out to the lake, anything like that. So wear your PFD at all times. If we catch you fishing in the tournament without your PFD on, or you take a picture of a fish that shows your torso without your PFD on, you are disqualified. There's no arguing that one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you have a line actively in the water fishing and you take your PFD off, it's a disqualification. You can take your PFD off with all lines in. Hopefully you get to a safe point. Take your PFD off with all the lines in. If you need to shed layers, if you need to throw on a rain jacket, something like that, have everything in, get yourself safe, take your PFD off, do what you got to do, and then immediately put your PFD back on before you start fishing again. So just know we've got cold water in this state. It might seem warm, it might seem great, but just underneath that at 1 atmosphere, which is about 7 feet, it's going to be probably 40 degrees, and thermal shock is real. You will open your mouth. It doesn't matter how used to it you are. There is a good chance that you will start sucking in water, and we really do not want to have to respond to anything like that. We've been real lucky right now with the club, but we really don't want to get into any of those situations. With that, it does need to be a U.S. Coast Guard approved PFD, either the upper body foam style. A lot of people wear the NRS. I think is that the one that you showed earlier? Yeah. On one of the previous episodes.
Yeah, we have a safety episode we shot with Ronnie, and it's got all this stuff in here. Showed examples of it. But yeah, that's the one I got, the NRS.
Yeah. And you can wear an inflatable as well. It needs to be the actual upper body inflatable, not the around the waist. Those are not Coast Guard approved because they don't have enough upper body flotation. So if you get knocked unconscious, say you're standing and fishing and you fell over with one of those, there's actually no telling if it would keep your head out of water. It would just depend on the position that you're in when you hit. So it is either the upper body foam or the inflatables. So along with that, you need to have your emergency whistle. It should be the waterproof style that doesn't have the ball in it. So it'll, no matter if you've just been in the water or not, it'll still, call out. It also doesn't help if your whistle is in a compartment in your kayak if you turtle. So make sure you've got it like on your PFD, easily accessible. I keep mine on a little strap that's right on my shoulder. So if I go in, I just turn my head and I can whistle. And I've checked it. Mine is stupid loud. And then the last major safety requirement for equipment is either a mounted white light like a 360. You can get them from Railblaza. You can get them from Yak Attack. That's the one that I've got. Is the Yak Attack Pro 360 light. But in Colorado, you can also use like a headlamp, something that's rapidly deployable, because we launch a lot before safe light. So if you do take advantage of that time and launch, you do have to have the lighting requirements, which is something that's rapidly deployable to avoid any kind of instances on the water, any kind of collisions, things like that. Along with that, there is another safety requirement in the state of Colorado for all vessels, like kayaks, anything that's got, a solid hull to it, is you do have to write your name, address, and phone number in there. That is a legal requirement in the boating regulation. So you actually do have to have that in there per CPW. The other thing about safety that I like to talk about is don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. If something's going on out on the water for you, or if you happen to see something going on, respond. We've had members from the club that have towed paddleboarders back in the wind. We've helped kayakers and other canoers that have turtled over. I've actually pulled a boat that was stuck in the trees at Chatfield with my kayak. I pulled it off so that he could drop anchor and keep from beating his boat to death on the trees. But just, help, but ask for help if you need it as well. If you get into an uncomfortable situation, don't be afraid to ask for help, because most of us out there are willing to drop what we're doing, help you, because who knows, maybe karma will help with the fishing sometimes.
Yeah, the first tournament I did here, the winds picked up real bad out of John Martin, and it was awesome. I mean, I think most people kind of called it, and we're coming back to the ramp. And that's another thing. Just know your limits on your kayak. If it's your first season, out here in these waters, the winds pick up out of nowhere sometimes. Have a good weather app to kind of follow the hourly forecast to predict what you can. But sometimes these winds are going to pick up, and then, guys in the club and gals in the club are awesome. They'll see people in waders, helping people get, back in at the boat ramp if the winds pick up. But beyond like just the cold water, that's the importance of having your PFD on, especially out here in Colorado, is that the winds can pick up out of nowhere to the point where, it's dangerous. Even if, you got a super stable kayak, all it takes is one bad break of a wave and you could go over. So yeah, can't enforce that safety stuff enough. We've got a video on it and more safety tips, but yeah, I won't belabor the point anymore. Go ahead, buddy.
Last thing really with safety is dress for the conditions and be prepared for the worst. Have some rain gear. Make sure if it's real cold in the morning, icy, that you've got, everything that you need to keep from getting too cold. Because if you do get wet out there, it does not take long to get hypothermic. And even if it's going to warm up afterwards, there's no good time to sit out there while you're just absolutely miserable trying to fish. So just, be prepared out there.
Yeah.
The next big thing is rules and regulations with both the state and our CKFC rules. So I'll start with some of the state stuff. It's the angler's responsibility to know and follow all of the state regulations, anything from the CBW Anglers Handbook, also anything that's particular to the lakes that we're at. It's the angler's responsibility to know those things. We don't always go over a lot of that stuff. We'll talk about some state or, lake specific stuff like spinny. Beforehand, we'll talk about the bait requirements and things like that. But it is that angler's responsibility, and a ticket does constitute DQ. So if you get a ticket while you're out on the water, if you get a ticket, driving way over the speed limit before the tournament, things like that, that is grounds for DQ. with that, one of the biggest things, and we had a huge infraction of this at Trinidad, my first year fishing with the series. A valid pass must be purchased and displayed for your vehicle for the body of water that we're going to. Whether that be a CPW State Parks Pass, the new like state park thing that they're doing for the vehicle registrations.
Yep.
If you've got DB plates, if it's just a day pass that you get, if you've got the little hanger pass, any of the senior citizen passes, whatever it is, you have to have the legal pass to be on that body of water in that park where it's located for the day, and make sure that that's displayed properly. We tell the lakes every year when we sign up, hey, we're going to harp on this, and we will, because we did have a big infraction. It was like 7 vehicles or something at Trinidad that did not have their park pass. So it was not a good sign when the ranger came through. She was very unhappy, really professional with us. We understood, but it was like, hey, this is a real bad optic. So we've been real careful to really harp on that ever since that incident. I don't think we've had any major problems or anything since then, but just know you have to have a legal pass for that state of, for either the state park, Horsetooth with the Larimer County, whatever it is for that.
Yeah.
Also, another agreement with the state that we make, all of our in-person tournaments are catch and release only. So even if it's bycatch, if we're in a bass tournament and you catch a 18.5-inch walleye at Pueblo, she's got to go back. We make an agreement with them when we sign the permits that says it's going to be catch and release only. They hold us to that. It is a ticketable offense. If they contact us and say, hey, is this person, with your club fishing the tournament, we've got to let them know, and they can ticket you for that. And then, as we stated before, a ticket constitutes a DQ. So just know that. Make sure that when you're in our events that you're letting those fish go, trying to keep them healthy. If you do have one that you just absolutely cannot revive, contact, let the TD know, give them some information. If you have somebody near you that's fishing, you can see, after you let it go, if they want to grab it, but it is catch and release for us.
Yeah. Something I was just thinking of here. I just registered my kayak recently, and I didn't realize the resources that we have at some of these, just all of our park visitor centers here in Colorado. So I went to Cheyenne Mountain, which is in Colorado Springs here. Pueblo would be the same way, or any of the parks really that have a visitor center. If you're looking for information, you can obviously go online to CPW's website. You can get a digital copy of the brochure. But if you would like just more information on fishing, they have rangers there. They have other workers that are just there to basically let you know, give you a bunch of information about the waters that you're going to be on, the regulations for each of them. And they have all the brochures there, which is really cool. So I picked up like the 2023 brochures and all the rules and regulations that are part of the state. But that is where you're going to get the legal information on the differences between these bodies of water, not just for our tournaments, but a lot of these, there's no like statewide walleye length or crappie length for guys that are going out and catching fish and harvesting them, so at least get on CPW's site and check that out for the brochure. That's digital, but if you want more information, you can always stop at one of those visitor centers at a park and pick up more information there. They're more than helpful. So.
And don't just rely on your other anglers around you. Most of us will take care of you, but as Christine Fisher found out here recently, somebody might give you the wrong information. It might be as innocent as could be, but you can get wrong information and be completely cut off of a possible check, things like that. So make sure that you know from the most credible source that you can get it from. I'm going to skip down a little bit because you did mention registering your kayak. So for CKFC, for our in-person tournaments, motors are not allowed unless you contact one of the tournament directors, myself or Justin, or if you can't get a hold of us, get a hold of Josh Hens or even Matt. They can try to get a hold of us to let us know. But there are exceptions if you have either a temporary or permanent handicap that renders you unable to pedal or paddle your kayaks. We can make exceptions for either individual or multiple tournaments. We want everybody to be able to get out there. But with that, if you do make an exception to have a motor on there, you do have to abide by all the state regulations. You have to be registered. You have to have the proper lights for it. So you've got to have like the red and green running lights, the 360 anchor light, all of those items. And then also, based off of what lake we're at, you have to have the ANS inspection. So like Pueblo, for example, they have an exemption for electric motors. Like if it's electric only, hand launched, there's an ANS exemption. But several of the other lakes, if that happens to be the one that you try to get the motor exemption for due to a handicap, they still require the ANS inspection, and that is on you to make sure that it's done either the day before or prior to the tournament, where you get the seal put on, or the morning of the tournament, even if that means that you have to launch a little bit later to go through the ANS inspection lines.
Yep, absolutely.
It's an easy process if you do have to do it. But like I said, it's just one of those added extras, and I just wanted to hit on that while we were talking about some of the state regulations of parks. Moving on to more club-specific stuff. New this year, we are only allowing the Catch brand boards. There's, I think, 3 different ones really to choose from. There's the plastic carbonate. There's the original style Catch board. That's the aluminum that has the black trim on the sides. It's like a trough.
Yep.
And then there is the Catch Elite boards, which is the solid aluminum. Like it looks just like the carbonate, except the whole thing's made of aluminum. Those are the ones that we're going with. I know a lot of the other series are not even allowing the plastic Catch boards. We are still, and plan to still, until anything might change with that. But we'll let everybody know it won't be this season. But we are going with Catch this year. Hog troughs are no longer allowed. The Berkeley measure sticks aren't allowed. Any of those other ones. It is down to Catch.
Yeah, and that has nothing, like we have no affiliation with Catch as a sponsor. It's just that in other tournament trails, people were able to bend the board on some of these other ones and maybe squeeze out an extra 1/4 inch or something. And it's just like when you buy a tape measure. Sometimes they're off by 1/8 of an inch or whatever that is. So this is just so that when people are fishing in a tournament, it's a fair ground for everybody.
Yep. And there are a couple modifications you can do to the Catch board. You can put the sticker on the fence. We were talking about that. It's kind of funny having a sticker, adding that little bit there. But if we do see that you're trying to take advantage of that and stacking 14 stickers on there, that's going to be a no-go. We will contact you and we will DQ your fish if you're a single sticker on the fence of the Catch board to help with identifying that the mouth is touching. You can also draw the black line at the arc of the fence where it meets the trough. That also helps to see that the mouth is touching the fence. You can also, if you've got like a 32-inch board and you want to cut it down to 28, you are welcome to do that. But you can't cut from the fence side. You have to go from the farther length and cut it down. And just know you don't get those inches back. If you cut it down and you catch something that's phenomenal for the state of Colorado on either side, I definitely don't recommend it. But you could definitely cut them down. Because of the move to Catch, our big fish limit is now moving from 30 inches to 32. So Matt, you want to show that big fish there?
I'd be happy to. Let me get this guy ready here. Yeah, this is from last year. You're familiar with that guy.
Yeah. So this was my big pike from 11-mile tournament last year. Clearly goes well past the board. I got 32 inches for it. So had somebody else had a big pike that also went by the end of the board, they'd also get 32. So we'd have a tie for big fish. In the case of a tie, it moves down to the next big fish. If those continue to tie, we continue moving down until we get to all 5 fish. If somehow miraculously you both catch 5 fish that are the same length, then we just split the pot.
Yep.
So our tiebreakers are the next biggest fish until we have no more fish, and then then we split it from there. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Old Town. Our big fish pot now has changed. It used to be $5 from every entry. Now that money has returned to the normal pot, and now we have $250 as a standard this year for our Old Town big fish. So huge shout out to them. Plus, we've got the kayak that's going to be raffled off at the end of the year. So that's huge from Old Town. Involvement pretty much with every tournament this year.
Yep.
If something goes on and you either lose your catch board or you don't have one coming into the tournament, you realize that you got down the road and can't find your board, give us a call. We do have a couple of spares that we'll travel with. Just let us know beforehand, but it is on you to find us to get those spares, hopefully before everybody's out on the water. That way you've got something that you could use that day and then return it back to us so that we can keep it for the next tournament to give out. That's pretty much it for that. All right, so moving on to more of the individual tournament style series information. So for bass tournaments, the mouth on the bass have to be completely closed. This is for our in-person tournaments, not our monthlies. So for the in-person tournaments, the bass mouth has to be completely closed. Otherwise, there is a 1-inch penalty. There is a little bit of judge discretion in there. If the mouth is just barely cracked or if there's a deformity, but that it is the judge's discretion in that. And that's not a area for, arguments or protest or anything like that. It's just to make sure that the judge is looking to see, is there a deformity that's causing that mouth not to be able to close? That's usually where that comes from. Right. Caught several, especially you get towards the spawn and stuff where their mouth is, looped to the bottom or hooked. And the mouth, you cannot physically get them to close all the way. And that's where that judge discretion comes in for. For multi-species, the mouth can be open as long as it is touching the fence at some point. If you go back to the picture of the pike or any of the other multi-species pictures, pretty much you'll see the mouth's open. Don't get your fingers in there trying to close the mouth. Nobody wants stitches or, back tracing, trying to keep from getting infections from pike teeth or trout teeth or anything like that. So we do allow for the mouth to be open in multi-species. That includes the bass caught during multi-species tournaments. The mouth can be open on those. Only your hand is allowed to be on the fish, and it cannot be under the gill plate, covering the eye, or directly over the junction of the scales to the tail rays. We use those to help identify the fish and keep from having duplicate fish submitted, which we'll get more to that a little bit later. But those are the areas you just can't cover that up because we got to tell that the fish is alive and that you're not submitting duplicate fish throughout the tournament.
Yeah, here's an example of like an eye covered. And like you said, it's so we can tell that fish is still alive. So.
You also can't have the paper or metal identifiers covering over the fish. Like we said, you can have your hand placed over the fish so you can hold it down, but we need to be able to see enough of that fish to identify it. So you can't also have like the identifier wrapped over the fish. It can't be holding the fish down. And with that, you also can't have anything else like a lure in its mouth. It can't, I think KBF allows you to have the line still there. For us, you cannot have the line there anymore. So that includes if you have a deep hooked fish and you choose to just cut the line, make sure that you cut it back far enough that it's not hanging out. Try to keep it cut inside the mouth. If you choose like a Texas rig or something like that that stays in, just cut that down so that it's not showing as a possible area to be held on or held down. Next, in multi-species, you are allowed to troll. You're allowed to use 2 rods if you have the second rod stamp. You can use live and prepared baits. All those are in multi-species. it's the angler's responsibility to know the rules and regulations for the lakes, as we mentioned before. How live bait works up in the mountain lakes up at like 11 Mile. The spinny bands for live bait, scents, salts, things like that. So it's on the anglers to know, what they can and can't use. Just know that during multi-species, you can use that flavor of bait, especially if you're doing like walleye fishing, if you want to use, crawler rigs, stuff like that.
Cool.
For bass events, you're limited to one active rod. So you can only have one line out fishing at a time, and it's limited to artificial baits and lures only. No worms, no minnows, anything like that. And one of the big things with bass, there's no trolling allowed. So what that means is that you cannot manipulate the bait with the use of your pedals or your paddle, or in the case that you had a motor exemption, your trolling motor. So you cannot manipulate the baits using a conveyance on the kayak. Now, there are a little bit of exceptions in this as far as like wind. If the wind is pushing you, you are allowed to drift with the wind. It's called strolling. And then you're also allowed to long line, which is where you go kind of toss the bait out. Like if you want to fish like a dam or something like that, or a particular piece of structure, you can toss the bait out, and with an open bail, you can let line out as you back away from it. And then by the time you close your bail, you have to stop any motion of the kayak. Like you have to be stopped, and then you start retrieving the bait in to work the lure. So that's a big thing with the bass, of just no trolling, no modifying the motion of the lure with your pedals or paddles, anything like that. So next one, submissions of fish. This is where we get into some of the good meat of the stuff. Our lines out time is usually 2 p.m. We'll let you know, if there's going to be either an extension or if we've got to back things up due to weather or anything like that. But just know our kind of standard lines out time is usually 2 p.m. That's the end of the tournament. That means that all fish must be caught, photoed, everything before 2 p.m. And with that, that means that the timestamp on your last picture of the day has to be like 1:59 and 59 seconds. Like it has to be like 2 p.m. is the absolute cutoff. So if anything's past that, that is a no-go.
Yeah. So if you submit a fish and it's 1:59:59 and the cutoff's 2 o'clock, you're good. If you submit a fish and the cutoff's 2 o'clock and you submit at 2 o'clock, that was already at the cutoff. So it's not going to be accepted. And we have to bring this up because it happens. You guys catch fish with like the last, minute or 30 seconds in there. So, yep.
Yeah, there definitely been some close calls. I think one of the ones last year, it was 2 o'clock and 50 seconds or something like that. But he got over to the judges beforehand and was notified of what happened. And he actually had pictures that were before 2 o'clock. So they were actually able to get that pushed back in because it was before what we're about to talk about next, the 2:30 submission deadline. So barring, we do have some special rules that will come out in Tourney X, and we'll talk about before like our South Park tournaments where we have, exceptionally bad reception. But typically the standard is a 2:30 cutoff limit for fish or photo submission. So it is on the anglers to make sure that you can get to a spot where you've got reception, even if that means, when you're pre-fishing, mark a couple spots where you can, get cell reception or anything like that, so that where you could submit at, even if that means getting off the lake a little bit early and, running a little ways away from the lake, especially like at Horsetooth. I've actually had to get away from the north ramp area to find reception in order to submit fish. So it is on the anglers to make sure that you can get that. But please, if you're having issues, technical difficulties, give us a call early so we can help you work that. If you call us at, 2:25 saying, hey, I'm having issues, there's not much we could do at that point. We can't advise you. We can't have anything worked. So just make sure that you take that into account and be as early as possible. With that, try to submit early if you can. Find those areas with reception, submit early. We've got some people that like to sandbag until the end of the day. But if you do that, just know that if you start running it to the end, there's not much we could do to help if something goes wrong, be it, the deductions, the stuff like we were mentioning before with the individual that, had the late picture that we had to DQ, but then he had the picture that was submittable after the fact, that the timestamp was right on. So just try to submit early so we can make sure that we can take care of that kind of stuff. Anglers are responsible for knowing the photo criteria. Matt, if you could throw the rules back up real quick so that we could show them that fish orientation.
Yeah.
So the photo has to clearly show the fish, all of the fish. It's got to clearly show the fence of the catch board, so that we can make sure that the fish is touching all the way to the end. And then it's also got to clearly show your identifier. So one of the big things is positioning. You can see in the photo towards the top right of the identifier, it's starting to wash out a little bit in glare, but you can still see the identifier there. You have to make sure that you position your kayak in a way that, you reduce enough glare so that we can see the identifier, we can see the fish, we can see where the fish clearly crosses one of those 1/4 inch marks so that we know what the length is.
Yeah.
No restraining devices to include hooks, lines, fish grips allowed, cut lines. Fish's eyes, gill plate, and tail fins must be clearly visible and unobscured. We have to be able to see that to identify it, to make sure that the fish is alive and healthy. We have to make sure that, you're not submitting duplicate fish, anything like that. So you have to give us those areas of the fish that we've talked about, so that we can actually judge properly and make sure that everything's good. And the last part of that is if the eye is damaged, so because we do need to see the eye to make sure that they're alive, if the eye is damaged, if it's either coming out through a hook or if he's missing an eye when you get him, take your pictures, and then while the fish is still on the measuring board, start your camera on video record that fish coming off the measuring board, going into the water and releasing alive. That way we can see, from that the fish was alive, healthy, released, missing an eye or blind from an eye, not sure what the situation's going to be, but we can see that the fish was released, it was alive, you weren't pulling something out of a freezer, or it wasn't something that, was stuck to a brush pile or something like that, that might have been dead. We just need to be able to see that and verify. And then when you do go to submit that, please shoot a message to myself, Justin, one of the other board members, to let us know, hey, I had this picture of a fish, this length, that was missing an eye or had a problem with the eye, and I have the video for it. That way we can have you send it to us for judging. That way we don't, DQ the fish before we know that we've got to look at the video for it.
Yeah, and one last thing on position, as you're talking about position of the kayak, but also position of your camera. You can see this picture here. It's straight on top of the board. If you put your camera too far down or warped to one side, it skews the image and the scale of that fish. It can also skew if we're able to see, is it actually touching the fence? So that is super important to have your camera centered over the fish.
Yeah, and a big one is with walleye. If we can't see the eye on the walleye, if you have that camera back just a little bit because of the shape of their head, their eye is kind of top of their head versus directly on the side like a bass. If we can't see that eye, unfortunately, the judge is most likely going to DQ that fish.
Yeah.
So that is part of the criteria. So make sure, take multiple pictures, do whatever you've got to do to make sure that all those elements are in the picture, and then send us the best picture. If something's wrong with that one, if you've got backups or anything like that, hopefully one of them will have enough that either the fish, it's better to have a 1 inch penalty than have a DQ'd fish. So just make sure that you take multiple pictures of what you got to do. Speaking of orientation, so as you can see there on the picture, the fish has to be, mouth to the fence of the bump board, tail going out, and then imagine the bump board being on your lap. Some people like to lay it differently in the kayak, but imagine it being on your lap. It's belly to belly, belly of the fish towards your belly, back away from you. That's the orientation. So even if you try to turn your catch board to the side to take it along the gunnel of your kayak, that's the orientation that the fish has to be on the catch board in the photo.
Yep.
You are allowed to pinch the tail to get length, but like I said, we've still got to be able to see it to judge it and make sure, a tail is a major identifier point for fish. So we still have to be able to see those certain areas. You can pinch the tail down as you see in the photo. That tail was pinched down and then they moved the hand out of the way so that you could see everything. But also make sure that you don't pinch the tail down in a way that we can't see it clearly touching or crossing the physical line of the board. If it goes across the midsection where there's no line coming all the way down, we can't conject that the fishtail crosses that point. So it might go back to the last portion where the tail actually crosses the line. So don't lose fish. It'll be measured to the last clear 1/4 inch and above line that the tail clearly touches or crosses. So that's a big thing. Touches or crosses the line. So that's what our judge is looking for our criteria there. All right, like I said, take multiple photos. Make sure that you've got a few, and then keep those photos for a few days. It usually takes us about 2 days to finalize all the judging process. So keep those photos for a little while to make sure that we've got everything that we might need. And then if we do need something, we can contact you. You've got those photos. You can just shoot them to us as we need to make sure everything's good to go. And the last part for that is fish can only be submitted 1 time per tournament. Like we said, duplicate fish we can't have. So we're judging to make sure, especially with smallies, when you get close to like spawn, they're super aggressive. You could catch the same smallie 4 or 5 times throughout the course of like 30 minutes. And then sometimes, we've had multiple instances. I even had one last year during one of the Bass monthlies where I caught the same smallie, but because of how everything was positioned, I didn't realize it. And it was about an hour later and probably 150, 200 yards away, like across the little cove. And Brett messaged me, it is what it is. I lost that fish. But, sometimes stuff happens. That's why we have to judge everything. But make sure that that's in there. And like I said, that fish can only be submitted 1 time per tournament. So if we do have like our first few tournaments of the season are bass one day, multi the next, or vice versa. If you catch one fish and maybe it's on a bed or something like that, and you go back to that same spot during the following tournament and it's still there, you could submit it again for a different tournament. You just can't submit it again, like, the same bass. Even if you go back at the very end of the day, you can't submit that fish again.
Yep.
I think that's it for all those.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, I've got the examples of, and we covered this in the first episode with Josh, but just some good examples to go over of just from our past seasons, some things that we tend to see. Like you said, this is a technique thing. You can take pictures on Tourney X in the app if you want to, but you're not going to have the ability to store extra photos there. You're going to have to retake that fish if you had or retake that photo if you had a bad picture, say, it moved its tail or, its mouth got away from the fence or something. So just a technique preference, take your photos on your phone, make sure you have your geotag information on there so we can actually see that you're on the lake, that we were actually fishing the tournament, but take multiple photos. And then that way, hey, if the fish move just a little bit, you can go in, zoom in on that before you submit it, pick the best photo, the ones that you have. And then after that photo, just take a picture of, something else that's not a fish. And then, you don't have like 6 photos of one fish. And then you try to submit the next fish you caught. And you're like, well, hey, was this the same one? Where was the last fish versus the one I'm catching right now? So between fish catches, I like to just take a picture of just my board blank or just anything, that's not a fish. And then I know, all right, these 6 pictures were this first fish, then I have a filler picture, and then the next ones go on. But here are some of the examples here. A lot of these are probably my own from last year, the mistakes I made. But right here, this one looks good to go, but the mouth's not touching the fence. And the judges will definitely catch that. On the TourneyX app, when they judge it, it has kind of a zoom function like this.
Yep.
It's way better, though. So they're going to go in and they're going to say, okay, it wasn't actually touching the fence. So, yep, that's a deduction. And then,
Yeah, and with shadowing, with how everything's set up, especially like Catch has done a really good job with their board and the controls on how, just how vertical that fence is. It's phenomenal. It is really easy to tell sometimes when that mouth is not touching, especially if you've got the black line there. It helps a lot with it, as long as that black line is on there and you can see the gap or the lack thereof. It's super easy to judge.
yep. All right, the next one is this is just a glare, and sometimes like you were talking about positioning your kayak, we got a lot of sun here, so the identifier looks great, but we can't tell what line that's on. So
yeah, and on the aluminum catch boards, it got me at Pueblo during a multi-species one time. It bumped me from 7th to I think 14th. Because there was a glare on one of my smallmouth and you could not see the actual line it was at. So they had to back it up to the last one they could read. And I lost, I think, 3/4 of an inch off of a smallmouth.
Yeah, that will certainly happen. Here's mine. And this is what you're talking about. So where it's like, okay, this looks like the tail is at whatever line that continues through 15 1/4 or whatever, right? Well, we can't just guess that. So that tail needs to actually touch one of those lines. It can't just go in the middle there. So we're going to judge where that tail is physically crossing a line, and that's what you'll be scored. So, and then open mouth on a bass here. Again, fine in a monthly tournament, but not on a live tournament. And then eye covered. We discussed that already. And then, hey, it's longer than the board. Sorry, but you're limited to however long your board is. If you got a 28-inch
and
board.
The funny part with this one, and if you actually had my camera roll, the first picture I took still had your fish grips in the fish's mouth, because I couldn't find mine, which turned out to be in my seat back bag. Had your fish grips in there just because I was trying to line everything up. When I took the fish grips out, the first picture that I took, the mouth wasn't touching the bump board. I don't know how at that size she was able to slide back a little bit, but then I had to readjust her and take another picture to get her up against the bump board. So just make sure, little adjustments, especially, trout are notorious for flopping, smallmouth and spotted bass. Spotted bass, I think, is probably one of the fish species that I've had the most problem with getting a good solid picture.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. I will take this down.
So the last thing I want to touch on real quick is prizes for this year. So we did change it. Now we're going to pay out the top 10% this year. Josh actually just posted the charts for that. So it's not going to be rounded up. So, 30 people, 3 places, 40 people, 4 places, and so on. If we get on to like the magic number of 70 people, somewhere in there, it's going to be some phenomenal payouts this year.
Yeah.
With that also, we were able to change that because of the money from Old Town. So now instead of the big fish pot being $5 per person, it's going to be the standard $250 across the board. So even if it's some of the smaller tournaments like we have sometimes at John Martin or late season in South Park, we'll still have $250 for big fish there. So huge shout out to Old Town. There's going to be sponsor items below the cash level for some of the top 10 members. Scott is still working on all the sponsor stuff to make sure that we've got the prize packages done. And then also at the tournaments, as always, we have random in-person giveaways for a lot of our sponsor swag. Some really good stuff gets given away each tournament. So stay afterwards, come to the area, chat, have a drink, do whatever, help celebrate, and then, hopefully win something. So with that is the long-winded captain's meeting.
Yeah.
Again, it is a long watch, but a lot of good information that'll hopefully keep you out of trouble and hopefully get you into the money.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for coming on, Jeremy. We have all of the rules linked to the PDF as well, where you can get that off the website, sealkayakfishing.com. Same place where you're going to register at the beginning of the year for everything. So don't want to close this out without saying thanks to our sponsors. We've got our platinum sponsors on the banners, behind us here on this podcast. But Scott's done just a tremendous job putting together the sponsors this year. We're giving away 2 kayaks at the end of this year. Got $2,500 in big fish bucks from Old Town. Shields are coming on huge again. KBF, Amped Outdoors, giving away all those batteries. Sergio with Southern Colorado Clinic. Waterline and a Native with the kayak there as well. Can't thank these sponsors enough for helping out. It's just gonna, we are a nonprofit. At the end of the year, the great thing about this is that we're going to be giving a check away to True Patriot Outfitters. They're going to be taking veterans and first responders out on the water for kayak trips and actually giving them equipment at the end of that trip as well. So it's awesome that these sponsors are helping out to the point where it just allows us to push more money into this charity at the end of the year. It's a really great thing. So you got anything else, Jeremy?
No, I'm happy to be here. And again, if anybody has any questions or anything like that, feel free to message me on Facebook. Usually available within a few hours or so of getting a message to clear stuff up. And then you can also shoot an email to the CKF Club at gmail.com. If you've got a question, one of the board members are usually checking that pretty regularly. But look forward to the season. Look forward to getting back out there and seeing everybody. And honestly, hopefully get to have a full season this year and nothing coming up in one of the tournaments.
Yeah, monthlies are starting in under 2 weeks.
Yep.
April 1st, we'll start our monthlies, and right after that, we're going to start off our schedule as well. So, so looking forward to seeing everybody out there, and we'll see you all soon.